Good afternoon and welcome back to the workbench. Welcome to more horribly hot weather in which I do not wish to be doing anything, but I suppose the show must go on, or something like that. As you can see here, or possibly you can't, you can maybe see, it's like 28.8 degrees in here apparently. This thing's fairly accurate, I think. But yes, it's rather warm and it's not fun, but anyway. Here's a power supply. It's a FSP HyperK 600W. Not sure exactly what the model number is. It's an HP600S. Yeah, there's not actually anything electrically wrong with this that I'm aware of. The problem is more mechanical, I suppose you could say. It does work. I've tested it. It powers up and everything. I bought this second hand for a cheap price. The reason was that the some of the cabling was missing, and I shall attempt to remedy that. I already did attempt to remedy that, but it didn't go very well. So now I'm going to do it again and make a video about it this time. Anyway, there's also this question here of the sleeving is falling off, so I need to open it up and fix that. Hopefully, if I can. It looks kind of frayed at the end, so I don't know. Or I might just end up taking it off completely. I'm not certain yet. Also, I think a piece of tin foil fell into this through the fan grill, so I need to open it up anyway and make sure I get rid of that, because obviously having a piece of loose metal rattling around inside a power supply is not a good thing. But more onto the actual fault, or so-called fault I suppose you could say, with this is this wire is not very well, it's not very good, is it? I mean, this is the this is my previous repair attempt, where you see, going back a little bit, so this power supply has all the appropriate connectors as you'd expect. It has your main 24-pin connector, it has a couple of PCIe 6 to 8 pin things. You can have them as 6 or 8, it's got a separate wire there. It's got, 8-pin dual CPU, auxiliary power, and it's got a few SATA connectors. It's got 6 of them here on these two cables. And I think one of them, unfortunately, one of them, going by the residue, it was this one here. You can see the sort of sticky residue on there, possibly. This one had tape wrapped around it, and it was kind of taped off. I'm not sure why. There doesn't look to be anything physically wrong with it if I look inside. Like, none of the pins are missing or bent or anything. So I don't know why that had tape wrapped around it as if it was bad. It could be bad. This one has got a crack in the side. It's been sort of squashed. You can see there. It's a bit faulty, but again, the pins don't look bad, so I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, I don't think I need 6 SATA connectors. 3 is probably fine. I don't intend to use this power supply for anything highly extravagant, so having all these extra things is not too much of a deal. But I do want to get this working, the standard old 4-pin power connector. Often called a Molex connector, but that's just the brand name. I'm not sure what the actual model of this exact particular connector is. It's not something that really comes up often, because normally you're not actually buying them unless you're building hard drives or something, or power supplies. This came to me when I bought it. This was cut off about here. There was just nothing there. It was just bare wires. There were no connectors like this on the power supply whatsoever, and for me, someone who uses a lot of old hardware, that's not very useful. I do want at least 1 or 2 of these on a power supply generally. So I had this one here lying around, and I thought, I can use that. I'll just splice it on and put it together, and unfortunately it didn't really go very well because I ran out of Heatshrink halfway through. I ended up having to do these with tape, and then by the time I got the thing all together, I looked at the connector and realized that at least the 12-volt pin and the other ones are actually a bit corroded. I don't know if it shows up on camera. But you can see that pin at the top there. I love how it focuses for like 1 second and then defocuses. So it's like it almost works, but then it doesn't. This connector's not very good. It's corroded and bad, and I realised that only after I'd put it on, so I'm going to have to get rid of it again and do something better. So I decided to give up entirely on this thing because, it's not very good. And instead, I just bought some new cable there, and I bought a few of these connectors here, which also don't tell you what they are. It just says, yeah, disk drive connector. Well, yes, that is what it is, but there's no model number. I mean, that's the JCar catalogue number, but that's not the manufacturer's number. Anyway, that's the thing there like that. And there's also these type, which are like IDC style insulation displacement versions that sort of crimp on to the wire, the same way that the actual original SATA connectors do. They just go through and they must just clamp on like that. So as opposed to this style where it goes in the end and is crimped on, or you could solder it, I guess. But yeah, different thing. I'm not actually sure. Funny, now that I look at these, I'm not actually sure how you're supposed to use them. I don't know if you're supposed to have a special tool. There was no explanation of that. It's got a little sort of clip thing that goes over the back, and I wonder if you're just supposed to put the wires in there and then push that clip over and that pushes them down. That would kind of make sense, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking that this could be similar to a telephone connector. Okay, so just for a quick explanation of what I mean, here's a tool for doing wires for a telephone jack. Well, here's the jack anyway for a start, and you can see it's kind of similar. You've got these little connectors here, and the wire gets pushed down inside there and is held in by the metal inside. You can see there's sort of two parts of the slot in the middle, and then you've got this tool here, a sort of punch down tool they call it, which goes into that slot, and you push that down and it pushes the wire in. And you've also got this blade here, like a little pair of scissors that cuts the end off on the inside to make it nice and short and nice, and there, this pushes it down and everything. It makes sense. So yeah, it's kind of like that. It pushes everything down. So I don't know if you're supposed to have a tool that's similar to this for these kind of connectors, or if the back clip is just meant to push the cable down for you. Again, there's absolutely no explanation on JCar's website or in the catalogue as to how to use these, or if you need a tool or not. I do notice that they're now on clearance for like 25 cents, so maybe no one bought them, and maybe that's why. I guess I'll experiment with them and see if they work. That might be quite amusing. But at least definitely I've got one of the normal ones here that I can crimp on with a normal tool, or solder on, or whatever, if that doesn't work. So I will at least have one working plug, which is probably all I really need, to be honest. But I will attempt to put all three on just to be useful. And the keen-eyed among you may have noticed that these wires are not the same colour as these ones. We've got red, we've got two black, and then we don't have yellow. We have kind of blue-green. It looks different on camera, or at least different on the monitor that I'm using as a monitor to monitor my video. Yeah, they didn't have yellow, so whatever. Green it is. That's fine. I also have some more actual Heatshrink this time, so I went and got some more of that, obviously. So there we go. We can attempt to repair this power supply, or at least, well, not really repair it, but just give it a new cable that I can hopefully use, and put this back in and get rid of the piece of foil that may be or may not be still floating around inside, which is probably the #1 issue at this point. So there we go. Let's take the thing apart and see if I can do something about that. So it's just got the screws on the sides because it's an FSP, and I think they're all like that. Most suppliers, they have the screws on the top. Like here, I mean, there are screws there obviously, but that's for the fan, so those don't count. Sorry, you can't see me undoing the screws, but that probably doesn't matter, does it? So let's have a look inside. This fan's also a bit dusty, so I might take that out and brush that down as well. See if I can open it up. Alright. So yeah, it's quite dusty in there actually, so I would like to do something about that. And now this power supply, I have tested it. It boots up a computer fine. The capacitors in there, they're Capexon and TPO, I think, which are not that great, but the primary is Rubicon, which is nice, and it's 450 volts, so it's not under-spec'd in a sad way. Some of these things, they run the PFC at pretty high voltage, and the cap is, maybe it runs at 390 volts and the cap is only like 400 volts. It doesn't last that long. So yes, I can't see where that piece of foil went, if it's still in there. Maybe I already got rid of it. I don't know. Yeah, nothing's coming out and I can't see anything in there, so anyway. Would have been nice if they had this fan on an unpluggable thing, but it's just soldered directly to the board with some silicone on top of it. At least they have used actual silicone and not that awful yellow stuff that goes corrosive and conductive. So that's really nice to see. So yeah, that's definitely a big bonus for this. I mean, the only real issue with this is the caps. The secondary caps are just not the best quality, but yeah, I mean, you can always replace those if they start to fail. That's one of the easiest things to do. Interestingly, the bridge rectifier is just 4 discrete diodes. I don't have an actual bridge in there. It's kind of strange. Anyway, yeah, well, that looks alright. I guess I'll have to undo these cable ties to try and fix this sleeving stuff. I guess I can show the trick that I use for that if I can find something to do that with. I love how this has completely diverged away from repairing the cord, and now we're going into mucking around with the cable ties. But anyway, alright, so I've got a little pocket knife here. You can use other things. Of course, if you have a decent supply of cable ties, you could just cut these off and put new ones on, which would probably be the more sane option. Where do I put this fan? It's rather annoying. But anyway, what I like to do personally is to get a pointy thing like a knife, or you can use a needle, sewing needle or something, and you can push this in and lift up on the little latch that this knife is not really sharp enough. There we go, that got it. And then the cable tie just gets completely undone. Now what of course you can do is you can cut it before this point here and you lose like a couple of millimeters off this end, which can be okay in some situations, although of course with power supplies they've already cut the thing pretty tight as it is, so yeah, undoing them this way and saving a little bit of length is often required unless you want to replace the entire thing. So that's what I do anyway. Now at least the fan is further away, and now I can see we've got 2 cable ties left, one that holds the entire wiring loom into the actual housing of the power supply. There's like a little hole on the back and it goes through there, so that just holds the whole thing in place. They don't have any sort of clamp in the actual case. They've just rolled over the edges of the cutout to make it smooth so it doesn't damage the wiring. Okay, I've got all the cable ties off, and I guess that's a good thing anyway, as I realise I should probably take the whole board out and have a look under the PCB in case that foil I was talking about ended up under there, because we don't want that on the underside of the board shorting solder joints out onto each other. That would be very ungood, so yes, let's not have that sort of thing. If we can help it. I don't know where it went. Like I said, it may have already fallen out. I'm not certain, but yeah, might as well have a look. I will feel forever concerned if I do not check this and ensure that there's nothing under there. Alright, so this should just lift up, and well, there was nothing there, it would appear. Just a bit of dust. I guess I'll brush that off though, we don't need that there. Dust also has the habit of turning conductive if it gets enough moisture in it, so it's not something you want everywhere on electronics either, to be honest. Right, otherwise that seems fine, so I can put that back in. This is the boring part I'll probably cut out. Anyway, what is nice is that none of the caps look bulged or anything. So I don't expect there will be a problem. In fact, this thing doesn't look like it's had a huge amount of use. I don't think. I mean, the fan certainly has a decent amount of dust in it, but the rest of it doesn't, so I don't know how that works, but anyway. Right, so the main ATX wiring had its own separate cable tie on it, which was this little one here, so I guess that probably needs to go back with the sleeving underneath it so we can clamp that in place and hopefully not have it falling out. Of course, when you do reuse cable ties, it can be a little bit tricky sometimes to get them to go back again. Sometimes you have to use some needle nose pliers and that to get a hold of them, but in this case it looks like I can just do it by hand. But yeah, sometimes if you just grab the thing and push it through, of course you probably can't grab it from the other side and pull it, which is why sometimes just putting new ones on is better, but in this case I think it should be fine. That seems to be fairly tight anyway. Now this one's one that seems really fun because it does I can't even get the things to get anywhere near where it was, so I may just have to put a brand new one on this particular section, to be honest. Yeah, I'm not sure that that's going to work, or at least not work easily, so yeah, I might just put a new one on that just to make it easier on myself and my sanity. So I decided to just replace this with a new one actually. It was starting to fall off and be annoying. I didn't think I could get enough sort of leverage on it when I was doing up the old one, so the sleeving was still sort of falling off. Anyway, so I've just put a brand new one on. That should solve that problem, and I've got another brand new one to put to hold the wiring back into the case, because again I think yeah, just trying to get this old one back on is too much of a pain. But the good thing is, like I said, I've taken these off non-destructively so I can reuse them for something else, so it's not a waste really or anything like that. So now we can put this back through here. Let me just see how they've done this. I think they did it like this, I think. Yeah, that makes sense. So that just keeps that in there and stops it all flying around, doesn't it? And that sleeving seems pretty tight now. Just wobbling my whole bench pulling on it. Yeah, I don't think that's going to fall out in a hurry. So that should be fine. And what else? Yeah, the fan wire. That's got to go get cable tied onto something else so it doesn't get caught up in the blades, but I'll do that in a little bit after I clean this out anyway. I'm not going to bother doing that right here, but yeah. I'll just do that later. Like I said, we're focusing on the cabling. I say after like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of mucking around with everything else. Yeah, let's deal with this cable, which is the other issue here. So I'll just take all these ones out of the way. They can all just hang off the side there. That's good. Now we've got some room to work on this. So yes, like I said, this thing here is no good, and these joints here are not that great because these ones don't even have Heatshrink on them. They've just got tape and it's falling off. So I guess I might as well just cut these off entirely. Of course, if I cut them this close to this cable tie, it's going to be annoying trying to solder them and pull them out and get enough room to work on them. So I'm going to have to take that cable tie off as well, I guess. Give me some extra room to work. Okay, I think I just haven't taken it off, but I've loosened it enough that I should be able to see. There we go. I can slide it back up the cable there, and now I've got enough space to work on these. So yeah, I guess I just got to cut these off again. Unfortunately. But hey, so now I'm kind of back to where I started with this thing, where I just had a cut off bit of wire just sitting there doing nothing. And this I can keep these wires and use them for something else, and this cable tie obviously, but this plug is, well, the housing is fine, but the pins are all decroded, decrotic, something. They're not very good, so yeah. Anyway, now we have the new wiring, which I can put on. So like I said, we've got all the colours are correct except for yellow. It's now going to become green. This is about 500 millimeters, I think. That should be long enough. I'd say that's probably about as much as one of these cables would normally be. If we compare that to one of the SATA ones, it's, yeah, about the same length, and we're joining it maybe a little bit closer up to the thing. It'll be a little longer, but that's fine. It would only be if the thing was, meters and meters long that you'd have an issue with the voltage drop on the cables, but this distance is good enough. Right, so I've just got to strip these, and solder it together, and of course don't forget the heat shrink, but it should be fine because I've got one open end which I'll put a plug on afterwards, so I don't really have to worry about that. I can just solder these on first and slide the heat shrink over the open end before I put this plug onto it. So no issues there. It's always fun when you solder something together perfectly and everything's wonderful, and then you realise you forgot to put the heat shrink on the wire, and then you have to cut everything off, and yeah, that's never cool. So always remember your heat shrink before you do this kind of thing. And I'll just get this prepared. There's not really much to say about that. I mean, just strip the wires back. There are various ways you can connect these, and obviously for this kind of connection you do want a decent amount stripped off, so I'm going to take off a decent amount there. What's that, 3/4 of an inch or something? Gives you enough to sort of twist everything together, which is what I like to do. So if I take the green, which is what I'm doing with this one, and we can see we've got these two here, and they do look quite long, I'm not sure. 10, 15 millimeters, about 15 millimeters I think. Is that 3/4 of an inch or something? And then you can kind of get them like this and twist them together. Just one way of doing it anyway. I like this method because it makes a relatively thin joint there. Let's see. And it's no thicker than the insulation really, so you can put a nice thin heat shrink over. If you tie them together in other ways and you end up with a big blob in the middle, then once you get heat shrink that's big enough to go over the joint, it may not be small enough to actually shrink over the insulation of the wire tight enough and actually be very good. So it's better to try and do it this way, I find. There are also other ways to do this, where instead of twisting the connection together, you sort of leave the strands untwisted and you just push them sort of into each other, and then twist them all together. So yeah, the other way of doing this is just to take the strands as they are, don't twist them, and just sort of push them together like this, and then sort of twist them, I think, like that. I'm not really sure if that's better or worse than the way I usually do it, but it is a way to do it. You can see it does go together. I think it pulls apart possibly a little. Well, actually it feels about the same, to be honest. So I guess both methods work. This will also give you a thinner sort of joint than this one, but if you tie this tight enough, it's about the same thickness. So again, that issue is not really a big deal there. And then once you've got everything twisted together, you can take your nice soldering iron. Obviously the thicker the wire, the more powerful iron you need. And then you can flow some solder on there. So you don't want to have the iron underpowered, so you end up taking ages to heat up the joint, and then all the insulation starts melting and everything. You do need to have it to be powerful enough. So and also getting the solder to get into the joint can be a bit tricky. So I would say to you got to wet the wire a little bit, get the solder melted on the tip, and get it going in. When you wet, I think this thing might not be turned up hot enough actually. How's it on? Like I was saying, getting the heat into the joint is obviously the most important thing. Otherwise, if we don't heat the whole thing up, the solder won't flow into it properly. And I just turned up my soldering iron because I think it was too low. I was on 300 degrees C and I put it up to 350. Now let's see what it does. Yeah, that's working a bit better. It's actually possible I should go higher, like 380 or something. But there we go, we're getting it. Now it's working. And that is a little slow, maybe. There we go, that's the first one done. That's pretty nice. You can see there. It's still pretty hot too, but you can see that joint there is actually a little bit. It does stick out a little bit further than the insulation, so again, the size of heat shrink you need to use on that might be a little bit bigger than you normally would use, but I think it's fine. It's not excessively large compared to the outer diameter of the wire anyway. So, but yeah, so that was one of the twisted together ones, which, as you can see, does look a little bit thicker to begin with compared to these black ones, which I've done with the other method. They do look a bit thinner. So I guess that's the advantage there with that, potentially. Oh yeah, another thing I just thought of, something else you don't want to do with these, which I can't really show here because I haven't done it obviously, but you see how this is nice and smooth, wrapped together, there's nothing sticking out. If you were to twist them together like I have with these other wires, and then at the ends you have like pieces sticking out, like you wrap it round and then it's pointing outwards slightly on the side of the joint there, and when you go to solder that, it'll often create like a spiky piece of wire sticking out to the side, and that's very bad because you want something smooth. You shouldn't be able to feel any rough pointy edges on it anywhere once you've soldered it. If you've got any pointy bits or anything, or stray strands of wire sticking out, you can put your heat shrink on there and it can actually pierce through the heat shrink, and then of course the heat shrink is not going to actually insulate the wire anymore because it's got a hole in it and a piece of wire or solder spikes sticking through it. So You want to be careful not to do that either, because that's not very good, obviously, because then it could short out. I mean, your computer power supply, your 12-watt rail, has a thing sticking out the side of it, and then that hits on the case somewhere and shorts out. So, yeah, you don't want to do that either. So, just to make sure of that. So when you twist everything together, make sure it's all nice and smooth. Make sure everything's, yeah, nothing's pointing out at the end or anything like that. Alright, so I've got all my wires soldered together now. They all look nice, aside from the fact that these ones are the wrong colours, but whatever. It's fine! Now I can put some heat shrink on them to make sure they're all insulated and don't short to each other. Where did I put my heat shrink? Did that just disappear? Oh, there it is. Okay. Forgot I just put it there. Okay, so I think this one should work. It's, well, except for that, which is a bit blobby. I'm not sure. It may slide over that. It probably will, but if not, I have a slightly larger diameter here, which definitely would fit, and is also not too big to be an issue. Anyway, we'll see what happens. I'll try for this one. So I usually try to go about the same length as the joint on each side if I can. Obviously, as much as possible. You don't want to cut this to the exact same length as the actual solder, because when it shrinks down it'll actually shorten as well slightly, and you'll end up getting exposed wire, and you can probably hear all those dogs everywhere, which is wonderful. Just what you want. Unfortunately, they're not mine and I can't do anything about it, so yes, you'll just have to have that as a fun background ambience to the video. Alright, so I'm just going to cut these about, I don't know if that's like 3/4 of an inch. I guess I'll cut this maybe 2 inches or 1.5 or whatever. I don't know, about that much. Whatever that is, and I'll just cut 4 of those, measure them against each other. Of course, if you want to get really scientific about it, you can look up all the different shrink rates of different heat shrinks. Some of them shrink different amounts. You know, to make sure you get one that's going to be nice and tight, or whatever you want. But yeah, in general, the average stuff, I'm not sure what the stuff from JCar is. I think it's a 2:1 ratio, possibly. Let's see if this will fit over this blob. It just fits. Just fits. Of course, we don't know where the actual ends are. You can feel the ends of the wire by feeling for the ends of the insulation, but also if you've done them all the same in the same place on the cable, you can line them up and match and make sure you've got enough clearance there. Make sure the thing is centered around the joint, and again, that's why I like to cut it fairly long to give a good amount of overlap, so even if you get it a bit off center, it will still cover each end fairly well. And of course, if you're really keen, you can always get colors of heat shrink that exactly match the cable colors that you're using, but yeah, I can't be bothered with that, so I just use whatever color I have, unless it's for something particularly important. But black is always good. It's fine. Clear can be fine too, obviously, but yeah, usually I just go with whatever I have lying around, which at this point seems to be black. Whatever's cheapest usually at the time when I order it is what I go with. But yeah, for some important stuff like mains wiring or something like that inside a product, you often, try to get the correct color. But with something like this, I mean, it doesn't matter. Hey, I mean, the 12-watt wire is not even the same color afterwards, so yeah. Now I've got the hot air going and I can heat shrink these. Some stuff in the way, so I can't bring the thing over fully, but I can just get this close enough that it should work. And obviously you don't want to get this too hot. Generally the heat shrink will have an actual rating on it to tell you what temperature to use. But if you go too high, it will obviously start melting and stuff, so you don't want to go over that. I'm doing this at about 180, although the actual temperature output from the nozzle doesn't feel that hot, so anyway. Obviously you can use a lighter or a small gas torch or micro blowtorch, whatever thing, which I've done before, but that does have the disadvantage of slightly singeing things, usually. And of course at low temperatures you do have to make sure to turn the wire around or point the hot air at every different angle, so that you get all the sides shrunk. More airflow and higher temperature, you could probably do the whole thing at once, but I'm not in a hurry here. This is fine. It's, like I said, a really hot day anyway, so I don't really feel any desire to have any particular dealing with more heat than necessary. Those ends go down properly. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Pretty good indeed. And of course again, if you have it too hot, then you do risk melting the insulation and creating more problems, so it's just better off to not go too high, if you can help it. There we go, that's that part done. So that's nice. These are all on there. And now we can, well, we can add some more cable ties, I suppose, and put this plug on, hopefully. Or at least one of them, anyway. Oh dear! This is the point in the video where I would connect this plug to these wires here. Except it's the wrong plug. It's, yeah, it's not the right one. This is the one it's supposed to be, with the socket type style connectors, and this is the one I've got, which has the pins that go into the socket. So I have the opposite plug to what I actually need. Oh dear, that's yeah, that's great. So I'm going to have to go and get that plug before I put that on. Unfortunately, so I can't actually use this right now. This will be great for something else, but not for this. It doesn't actually say on there, it just says, you know, plug, disk drive. I didn't even think about it. I didn't think they would sell the other version, because it doesn't make a lot of sense, but oh well. This will be good for an extension cable or something, or a splitter, but not good for what I want here. That's hilarious. I obviously wasn't thinking when I went to the shop that day. I can't remember, it was a while ago. I've only just recently got round to making this video because I actually want to use this power supply for something, and well, these ones are correct, however. They do have the correct thing. So yeah, what does that say? Plug, yeah, okay, it is. Well, let's see if these work then. Again, I have no idea how these are supposed to work, but let's just try it and see what happens. And hopefully I don't run out of disk space. But there we go. I guess I'll put this one maybe in the middle here. I better get looking at this one just to make sure I get the pin out right. So it is beveled on the top edge there, so you can see these little bevels. That's keyed, so we know which way is around. So this the same thing, so we want that around the same way as that, which means this should be our green wire on that end, and our two blacks go in the middle, and then the red goes on the other side. So if I just orient these around the right way. No, hang on, I want to do it in this area. It'll be easier to fix in this section if I stuff it up. And I mean, I may well stuff it up, so it's actually a good thing these are bare. If I do get it all wrong, I can take this off and just put some Heatshrink over to hide the evidence. But let me just make sure these are around the right way. That should be fine. And then this would go, well yeah, it would go that way. again with the beveled top going there. We want the red on the left and the right, green or yellow on the right. And then what do? Just push this down over the top? Possibly. That's how you're supposed to do it. Can't really see how that's supposed to work, but let's give it a try. Just maybe put it on the bench here and just mash this down over the top of it. It just flies back off again. Push harder, maybe? Come on. Yeah, I don't think this is how you're supposed to do it. I mean, it is pushing the wires down, but that's, I don't know if that's actually made an electrical connection or anything. I suppose I could squeeze it in the vise and see if that makes any difference, but honestly, yeah, I don't know if that's actually gone in, so, I mean, I would say you're supposed to have some kind of tool for this, really. It's, seems a bit strange, to be honest, the way that this has been designed, and the way they just sell it without any sort of explanation of what to do with it. Unfortunately, so yeah, bit odd, that one. Well, we can test to see if there's actually an electrical connection to the socket, to the plug, to the whatever it is. Alright, let's get the meter in here. We can connect this. I've got a hook probe, let's probe onto the red wire, for example, and then we can test the red socket on this. Yeah, we get absolutely nothing, so that has not actually connected to anything. Try the black, try the other black. No, nothing at all. Well, that's fun. So yes, this has made no electrical connection whatsoever, even though it looks fairly nice. Kind of. Yeah, that's fun. I guess I'll try and push them down with a screwdriver or something and try and actually make a connection. But yeah, it's a bit weird. I don't know why they don't explain that in the or anywhere, or offer a tool or something. It's a bit ridiculous. Maybe they just thought they'd stock it because they thought it was something people would use, but didn't actually bother to see how it should be used. Well, anyway, I guess we'll figure it out together. Or maybe we won't. Maybe this will just be a complete disaster. Who knows? Yeah, so I've levered the back off again, and yeah, I mean, you can see the wires are pushed down on top of the things, but they're not actually pushed down into the slot properly, and the insulation has barely been touched. So yeah, they're just sitting in the top there. So obviously this is not meant to clamp this on, not like other sort of connectors. The IDC connectors for ribbon cables work differently, but this obviously, yeah, this is something else. So I assume that you are supposed to use some kind of tool to put this on, and I guess maybe we could use a screwdriver or the blunt end of a pair of pliers. I could maybe push it down like that, but even that is not working very well. It's very tough and thick, which is as you'd kind of expect for something like this. So I don't know. Am I supposed to just... Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't work. There's probably a special tool somewhere that you're supposed to use for this kind of thing, but I don't have it. And my telephone tool won't work on this, that's for sure. It's just completely the wrong size. and this has two double blades instead of the telephone sockets, which only have one, so that would not work in the slightest. I do not know how this is supposed to be used. But yes, I suspect there is some kind of tool that you're supposed to have that I do not have, that JCar does not mention, and that I have absolutely no idea where I would get, or even what it would look like, or what it would be called, or anything. So that's wonderful. This this video is not going very well at all. That's yes, a rather sad ending for now anyway. So I can't even put the plug on the end because I have the wrong type, and I can't put these on because I don't have the right tools or the knowledge or something. So yeah, I probably could work at it with a something and push it down on there, but I don't know if the connection would be reliable. It may end up damaging the plug and not making a good connection, so who knows. I'll have to do some research on that, I suppose, and come back later with that. Yeah, unfortunately that's not very useful. Okay, so there's an update a little faster than I expected. I did actually manage to get these two plugs on. Possibly not the way you're supposed to, but they do seem to be on there pretty well, and everything seems to be electrically connected. So yeah, I managed to do it by taking this small screwdriver. I don't know what size it actually is, but anyway, and that fit just nicely down in here, so I just pushed these down in the center part, and that seemed to work quite well. Possibly the official tool is something similar. But yes, so you can possibly see, especially like this black one there, where the insulation has been cut and the wire, and on the red one here too, you can see the wires in between the things. So it does seem to work if you push hard enough. So then you can put the little back clip thing on, and it seems to work fine. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to be an issue electrically. I've tested from the 12 volt to another 12 volt wire, like on the PCIe connector. I've done that with the ground, with all of them. I can test the grounds together and do a loop through thing, and yeah, we get 0.3 ohms reading on my multimeter, so it indicates a very good connection. So it looks like they have actually gone on okay. And I should be able to get decent power out of these. I don't think there's any issue. It hasn't like cut the wire in half and it's fallen out and done anything weird like that. So I think it is actually in there pretty good. Obviously not how you're supposed to do it, I suppose, but yeah, it has actually worked. So that's nice. I just have to get the appropriate plug for this end, and I can get that working. The only issue with that was I had to set this down on the bench and hold it there and push down really hard, and I've got possibly a bruise in my hand now from that, and I also managed to stab myself in the thumb, so that was fun. So yeah, not ideal, but would I buy this again? Probably not unless I can figure out what sort of tool you're supposed to use, because it obviously isn't a screwdriver. But you obviously can't just jam the back on and expect it to work like a ribbon cable thing. I mean, you do those in the vise, you can, or there's probably a special tool for those as well, but the point is that the connector housing does the crimping, it does the does all the stuff. You don't need a special separate tool really to actually do that, whereas these, it looks like they do. And again, probably something similar to a telephone tool, but that's a slightly good result anyway. I can finish that off, and eventually everything should be fine. But yeah, so I guess I'll update this video once I get that other plug, the correct one, and wire it onto here, and then that'll be the end of it, and we can finally have something that actually works. It's a real shame that JCar doesn't actually sell a tool for these. I mean, they sell the connector. I don't know why they don't sell the tool, or at least tell you, what type of tool to buy if you want one, which is rather annoying. So I guess I'll go on Farnell or DigiKey or something and search for these connectors, or try and look up what exactly these are from the manufacturer and see what they suggest to use, because I'm sure, I mean, these things are used all the time when building power supplies, so you know, there must be some actual tool for this that's meant to be done, because yeah, but I don't know what it is. I mean, it's not a common connector that's used, you know, aftermarket or anything. Normally when you buy anything with these connectors on, they've already been pre-made, so yeah, it's not surprising there's not much information commonly around, but I'm sure if I do enough research I can find it in the end. But yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, and I reused the cable ties from inside to do these two, seeing as I replaced the ones there with brand new ones, so I just reused this one here to that, and that's useful. Anyway, so yeah, we'll come back when I get the thing for this. Alright, so just a quick tangent back on the connectors again, because I just felt like I wanted to do that. This is the original, well, actually not original, I think it's a copy, but this is the Molex number, or at least one of them. Apparently it's series 8981. That was the series, and Molex don't actually make these anymore, probably because again they're not used as much as they were in the past, but this was one or the original things that people are referring to when they say Molex connector, but apparently it was actually this one, the TE Connectivity 1-480-424-0, which is apparently the original connector. It was first used on disk drives, and Molex actually was like a second source for it, so I don't know. And this one's still made, you can still buy them 80 cents. That's just the housing, of course, you have to buy the pins separately. But yeah, that's the original thing there. So, but that's not the style that I had. I mean, that is the style I have that I'm about to wire on, but that's not the IDC style ones that I was messing around with before. I don't know if they have those. I did find some, but I'm not sure if they were the same pin pitch or even the same shape. They were similar. I did find these, like the SATA version with this style, and that it does actually come with this tool, or this tool is recommended for it, which makes sense. You know, this looks like the tool that I would have liked to have had, but I used my screwdriver and it seemed to work just fine. But yeah, you can see the shape of that makes more sense. Although this one here is, you know, $77, and that's a manual tool. I'm assuming there is a larger, more automated thing that at least can do all the wires at once. I mean, you've got, you know, five wires here. You'd probably have a more complicated tool that can do all of them, and possibly in factory production you'd have some kind of automated machine that can do it. I don't know, but this is obviously for sort of prototyping and stuff. I don't think you'd use that in a production environment, but maybe you would. I don't know, but it's a shame that JCar don't sell something like this to go with those connectors that they sell, because this is obviously the correct type of tool that you're supposed to use. And yeah, it's kind of annoying that they stock the plugs, but they don't have even just at least a basic tool like this. Even a cheap copy or something for $20 would have made sense. But anyway, I wonder if you can get something like this on eBay. It might be possible to find like a cheap version of this on eBay or something, but anyway, I guess I probably don't need it now, because I have already put the plugs on with my screwdriver, and it seems to work okay. So yeah, but anyway, that's just that. I thought I sort of wanted to know, you know, is there actually a official tool for this? And yeah, there is. It's this and probably other ones. But yeah, so they don't expect you to use a screwdriver, but that's all I really had. Anyway, back to the power supply itself. Let's try to actually do something with this and put that final plug on, and then I can have a fully working thing without a bunch of bare wires sticking out, because that's the whole point of what we're trying to kind of avoid, and also have the thing. So yeah, so I've got these on there now. Remember from last time, that was 2 days ago I think I shot that, and now I do have the official plug here, which is this one from JCar. This is just a standard crimp thing, but yeah, this is the actual correct correct one, rather than the other one, which was the other one. Anyway, right. So now I can finally put this on here. And oh yes, I've cleaned the fan in the meantime as well. You can see all the dust's gone. I've cleaned the fan, screwed everything back together, got all these cable tied together. This sleeving is all now nicely cable tied in place and isn't falling off. So that's nice. So yeah, certainly a fun time dealing with this thing. But there we go. Yes, there we go. The actual sockets. That's what we want. The socket version, and the actual correct plug. Yes. So these are quite easy. They're attached to this little strip of metal, but you can just flex them to and fro until they break off like that. It's simple to do. I don't think it's very easy to crimp them while they're still attached to that. So just take those all off. You don't need to bother cutting them, you can just bend them off like that. And yeah, so that can just stay there. So you just crimp these onto the wire and then just push them into the plug housing. It's not like you have to thread the wires through the housing first and then crimp them on and pull them back or something. There's maybe some kind of connectors that do that. I don't know of any though, to be honest. That would be a bit strange, but yeah. So anyway, let's see if this crimping works. That'll be the fun part. I've got this rather cheap tool here. I don't know if it's amazing, but it might work. I've used it on other things, larger things. Not sure if I've used it on something this small, but it might work anyway. So I guess you can twist your wire up and just put that in there. So push that into here. This bit there is for holding the insulation, and that's for actually crimping on the wire. Obviously, you don't want to cut the wire too long. I think about 8mm or something seems to be about right. Maybe less. But obviously, you don't want to push it all the way down inside this because then it won't plug onto the hard drive properly. Or whatever. But the hard drive pins don't go all the way into this connector, so if the wire is a little bit in there, it should be fine. But yeah, you don't want to have it sticking out the end because then obviously you can't plug it in. Yeah, it's kind of tricky, but if I do it in little bits and just sort of carefully sort of work my way around, it's kind of working. Be nice if this thing would actually get in focus, but oh well, let's see if I can just bend some of that over. I'm using this of course completely incorrectly, I'm sure. I think I'm supposed to have a different tool with smaller, well, I would say die, but it's not really a die, it's just a very basic thing. But if I just sort of turn this around and squash it on, muck about with it, yeah, we can see we've kind of got that on there basically. Now that's not obviously not tight enough to make a good proper connection, so I will need to squeeze that down a bit more, but we do have the basic thing kind of in the right area. I just got to get that pushed down tighter. Yes, I think I do need a different tool for this, because the this does work okay for larger connectors, but obviously this is too big for these ones, unfortunately. But yeah, it looks like it's probably doable if I just fiddle around with it. Anyway, yes. Oh well, hey, we didn't use the correct tool on these, so why use the correct tool on this? Let's just do it all the dodgy-bodgy way. It's fine. It'll get there in the end. If I have to solder these on as well, I mean, and put some Heatshrink or something, it's fine. I mean, that is actually fairly tight. I can pull on it, it doesn't move, but it's definitely not like fully tight around the wire. So you do need to have a nice tight connection, otherwise it's gonna, you know, have poor contact and you put heavy current through it, it's just going to burn up. So we don't want that. Anyway, I'll just finish these off camera because it's probably going to take a while of mucking around with them. But I think eventually I'll get something that's satisfactory enough. Alright, so yes, enough messing around with these, and they seem to have gone on okay. Probably not perfectly done, and well, no, they don't look perfect, but they are tight and they are in there pretty well, so I think they're quite good. Yeah, I think a better quality tool, higher quality tool, than just something with the right size. I'm not sure if these things in here are the right size, or maybe a little bit too big, which doesn't help. But yeah, I mean, this is just some basic thing I got a million years ago. Never really used it that much. So yeah, I think if I was to do this more, I'd get something better. But hey, it kind of works. I don't think I need to solder them, although the strain relief bits don't seem to go down very tightly. So I'm not sure about that. I might see if I can get some heat shrink over that, just to give it a little bit of sort of strain relief. I think I can get something that'll fit over these connectors, and then will still be small enough to go on there. So I may do that. Just in case, but other than that, it's just yeah, just put them into the plug, into the housing thing. Actually, I can't be bothered with the heat shrink. I've got these on pretty tight, I think is fine. What I might do is just steal the cable tie off this old one and just put it up here, closer to the end where these go into the plug, and just use that instead. It's probably a better idea. So just copying this one to make sure I get everything around the right way, remembering that yellow is now green, so we need to do that properly. And I think, yeah, I don't think it matters which way around these go. Like, well, it matters which position they're in, but these things are fully like circular, and the latches don't latch onto any particular like thing inside the housing. So I think it's just really is just a case of making sure that's correctly around the right way, and then just pushing them in. And yeah, it just goes in and works. So yeah, and then we got the red goes the other side, and the black, I'll just make sure these line up with the other plugs. So this one comes next to the green wire, so that one we want to put in that position there. Not that that probably matters that much, but I don't know, I feel like having them all correctly wired like that seems to be a nice idea, and there we go, we've got a whole new plug on there. The contacts of course are a little bit wobbly in the plug, that's just how these things are. If you've never used these, if you're new to the PC game and you haven't had experience with these type of connectors, then yeah, they're kind of loose, and sometimes you got to wiggle them around a little bit and wiggle the wires and just wiggle them to get them into the drive. The SATA connectors don't have that problem in general, but yeah, these ones sometimes do. This is a cheap version, of course. It's not a, this is just some generic Chinese one, I guess. This is not a, you know, a TE connectivity or a proper Molex part. It'll be a cheap copy, so that's probably why it's a bit loose anyway. But now I shall steal this cable tie from this other assembly here. No, I think that's too small. Unfortunately, yeah, these cables are thinner than these ones, so that won't fit on there. But that's okay. I'll just get a brand new one. There we go, a new cable tie. Well, kind of new. It looks pretty old and crusty, but it hasn't been used, so it's what we need. Doesn't matter if it looks a bit crusty. I'll just put that in there and do that up nice and tight. And yes, that should be that. There we go. Power supply has had the cable replaced. It's got 3 connectors on it. Now it's actually a lot more useful than it was, and we don't have these bare wires just hanging around and ready to short out on something. So isn't that a good result? The thing is all back together, all more useful. Obviously there's that broken SATA one, or the kind of dented one that I could potentially replace at some point, but I don't think I'll do that. There's already 6 on there and I don't think I'd need that many. I'm not going to use the supply for anything that requires, like a bunch of drives, but I did want to have at least, a couple of these older style connectors on it just to be useful. So there we go, that's that. The power supply is back to usable condition again. It's a pretty nice power supply, it looks like. I can imagine the only thing I may need to do with it at some point is replace the output capacitors. They are cheaper brands. The primary seems fine. It's a nice big Rubicon, 450 volts. Other than that, it's a nice basic power supply. I like the fact that it has the standard design. Doesn't have like DC to DC converters on the 3.3 and the 5 volt rail. Both power supplies can be really efficient, but it's just added complexity, and I personally like simpler stuff that's easier to repair if necessary. And for something like this, that's a half decent brand and a fairly decent spec, I mean, yeah, it's nice to have it to be serviceable in a fairly easy way if you need in the future. So yeah, I'd rather have something more basic and lose a little bit of efficiency. And honestly, I mean, I wonder, something like that in a long enough timeline, the electricity saved with a more efficient unit, will that really be offset by the fact that something more basic is more repairable and can last longer? And then the manufacturing costs, the environmental costs, the energy cost, whatever, of making the more efficient one might be offset by the fact that this one is longer lasting and more repairable and could have more use out of it. So in the end, I mean, quite potentially the actual difference may work out to be basically the same. So I don't really buy into the whole thing that you have to have the most efficient supply possible, because often those ones are just more complicated and they fail faster, and when they do, they're often harder to fix and more likely to be thrown away. So in the end, I don't know if there's actually a difference. You might as well just stick with the old ones, in my opinion. At least that's what I do, because it's easier to keep them going. Just like old cars, the simpler the engine, the simpler the everything is, the easier it is to fix and the longer it can be used, which is probably more energy efficient and more environmentally friendly in the long run. Because all the sunk manufacturing costs and all the energy costs that are caught up in the production is probably one of the biggest things in the whole affair. So yeah, anyway, but there we go. It's a power supply. It has a new cable. Everything seems to be nice. And that's that. This was supposed to be a short video, but it's turned into a much longer one than I thought because of all the unforeseen issues with it. But there we go. That's something different. Finally an actual repair of sorts, I guess. Hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully that was useful, and I'll see you next time.